Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. I want to thank Al-Jaafari for inviting me. It's an honor and a privilege to be here. It's my first time here, so inshallah it's hopefully first of many. Also, inshallah you guys could bear with me. For me, with public speaking, people have different likes and not likes. I don't know how to explain it, but the more people for me, it's the easier. The less people, the harder, and it's a small crowd. So, inshallah, you'll bear with me. There's going to be, inshallah, a 3-part series, and we're going to be talking about the station of Imamate in comparison with the purpose of creation. And we're going to look at these two aspects and try to see what the relationship they have with each other are. So it's actually a pretty interesting conversation. And today there's going to be 3 different parts. So today the first part we're going to talk about the imam, or the station of imamate, being the most virtuous. Now whenever I mention the imam, I'm not speaking of a particular imam. I just mean the station of imamate, so this position. Okay, and so the person who holds this position has to be the most virtuous of all other people in the world. And we're going to look at what does being the most virtuous mean, what qualities does that entail, and how can we prove it? Because of course we believe it. All of us being Shia, we believe that the Imam is the most virtuous, but there's differences of opinion, and our Sunni brothers attack us on this issue. So we should be able to defend it. So we're going to look into some of their opinions and give answers to their opinions. Next week, inshallah, we're going to take that a step further, and we're going to actually try to establish that the world or the universe was created for the Imam, right? For the station of Imamate. And we're going to try to prove it. We'll see if we could get there. Inshallah, we'll look at different traditions, and we'll look at different explanations of these traditions, and we'll try to see if we could conclude, such a strong statement. Then the third week, inshallah, we're going to concentrate on Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And of course, the Prophet is the highest Imam. So the Prophet also holds the station of Imamate, and he's the highest. There's no one that is more virtuous or higher than him ever created. So we're gonna look at him as being the pinnacle of existence or of creation. And we're gonna look at how that relates to, again, the purpose of creation and why everything is the way it is. So if you're okay with that, inshallah, please recite as-salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So today we're talking about the most virtuous, the afdal. And there's 2 main definitions of this. Okay, there's 2 different aspects. The Shia, us, we accept both of them, whereas our Sunni brothers only accept one of them. Okay, so the first definition, or the first explanation of what it means to be the most virtuous, is that the Imam has to hold the highest amount of spiritual and physical qualities such as knowledge, bravery, strength, and taqwa, and piety. So that means the Imam has to be more knowledgeable than everyone else. The Imam has to be physically stronger than everyone else. And this is one physical quality that they mention. The Imam has to be braver than everyone else alive. And the Imam has to be more pious. Has to, observe his religious duties better than everyone else alive. Now this aspect of afdal, of afdaliyah, of being more virtuous, is accepted by both sects, by Sunnis and Shia. The second aspect is only accepted by the Shia, and that is that the Imam has to be the closest to Allah. He has to be the one that's closer than everyone else alive to Allah, and he has to be the recipient of the most rewards from Allah. So because of his virtuous actions and because of his closeness with Allah, he accumulates more rewards than everyone else alive. Okay, so these are the two different meanings of being the most virtuous. Right? Now, just to go over some of the words of our theologians throughout history, right? So we have many different scholars of the Shia faith who have said the same thing over and over again throughout their books of aqaid and beliefs and theology. And I just wanted to mention a couple, just to bless the speech with the words of the ulama. So, for instance, Sayyid Murtada, who is one of our first scholars. He was one of the first scholars a long, long time ago. He's talking about the station of Imamate, and he says that first they have to be the most virtuous, and they have to, receive the most rewards. So that's what we said, the second part of it. And then he says, min sifatihi an yakuna a'lam al-umma bi ahkam al-sharia. So he has to have the most knowledge about divine laws, wa biwujuhi siyasiyya, and about politics, wa tadbir, so about management and leadership, wa minha an yakun ashja'ahum, and he has to be the most brave. So here you see that this is one of the first scholars we have, after the ghaibat of the Imam, and he's saying these. Then we have Allama Hilli in Kashful Murad. He says the following traits falls under the obligation of the Imam being the most virtuous, right? He has to be the most virtuous in knowledge, in religion, in generosity, and in all spiritual and physical traits. So these are the words of our highest ulama. Okay? Now, 2 points I want to mention before we look at some of the criticisms of the Sunnis and then try to answer them. One point is when we're talking about the Imam being the most pious, or the Imam being the strongest in religion, what a lot of people look at is worship. Now, of course, we know that the Imams not only worshipped more than everyone else, so their quantity was more, but the quality of their worship was also superior to everyone else. So even, a 2 rakat prayer of theirs compared to anyone else is more virtuous. And also the amount of prayers that they would do during the day was more than everyone else as well. So we have traditions that Imam Ali alayhi salam would pray 1,000 rakat every night. And you have, in Laylatul Qadr when we pray 100 rakat, you see how hard that is. Imagine 10 times that every night. Right? So the amount of worship is unbelievable. But the point is that the quality is more important than the quantity. So a lot of times, us as Shia, we overlook the quality. We don't concentrate on quality, and we look at people, we determine whether people are religious or not, whether people are pious or not, by looking at the quantity of their worship. And that's a mistake. So I'll give you 2 examples of how this is a mistake. In history, we have the Khawarij, right? The enemies of Islam who went and fought against Imam Ali alayhi salam. They fought against the Imam. But these were people who prayed day and night and fasted every day. They had the marks on their foreheads from extended prostration. Their stomachs were flat because extensive fasting. From the outside, you would think that, wow, look at this person. He worships all the time. He must be so close to Allah. But the quality of his worship was problematic. He wasn't close to Allah. He fought against the Khalifa of Allah. So we see that the quantity doesn't mean anything here. Another example in modern history, after the Islamic Revolution in Iran was victorious, there was a bomb that went off that destroyed or killed the majority of parliament members in Iran, as well as the head of the judiciary branch and other important government officials, all at the same time. So this is a bomb that would cripple almost any nation if it happened. You can imagine over half of the government is killed on one day. How strong that is. The person who is responsible, the person who set the bomb off, was one who was known to be extremely religious. He was the first one to enter the musalla in the parliament every day for every prayer. He was the last one to leave the musalla in the parliament every day. Everyone knew him and respected him as being religious because of the quantity of his worship. But he was a munafiq, he was a hypocrite. He was only doing that to gain their trust, to be able to bring a bomb in and explode it. Right? But sometimes we overlook. Sometimes we allow ourselves to look at quantity and not quality. So that's just a side note. We should be more, we should pay more attention to ourselves in the quality of our worship. And we should also, when we're judging other people, we shouldn't judge people just to the extent of how much they worship. So please recite a salawat so we can get back to the topic. Now, one of the benefits of realizing what the qualities of being the most virtuous person is in determining imamat is that we're able to recognize who the imam was. So when we look in history, we could look at Imam Ali alayhi salam, and we could compare him with these qualities to all the other companions. And this should make it clear to us that he should have had the station of imamat, and he did have the station. So if we look at all of the qualities, knowledge, we know that Imam Ali alayhi salam was more knowledgeable than all the companions. There's even plenty of stories where the three khulafa, whenever they got into a religious dilemma or a religious problem, they would go to Imam Ali to ask him. He was known to be the most knowledgeable about Islam amongst all the companions, even amongst his enemies. Strength. Who was it that picked up the door of Khaybar and threw it? Right? No one's stronger than the Imam. Bravery. With bravery, his bravery was proven in all of the battles. No one could dispute that. Taqwa. The Imam was, by far the best worshipper of Allah that was alive. So for us, when we know the qualities that we're supposed to look at, we could easily find the Imam. Right? So that's one of the benefits of learning these qualities. Okay? But as I said, the Sunnis have different opinions. So with the Imam being the most virtuous, there's 4 main opinions. Now the Sunnis, it seems, Allahu Alam, but it seems when I review it, it seems that what they're doing is they're trying to give excuses of why Abu Bakr should have been in the position of leadership instead of Imam Ali alayhi salam. It seems like this whole conversation is trying to justify an historical event. Instead of treating it as, a real theological topic, they're trying to make excuses. So I'll go over their opinions, and then maybe if you come to a different conclusion, we could discuss it. So the first group of theologians is basically led by a scholar by the name of Abu Bakr Baqillani and his followers. And he said being the most virtuous is a condition of imamat. So the imam, or the Islamic leader, has to be the most virtuous. But if choosing the most virtuous imam poses a problem in the Islamic ummah, then we should choose the lesser virtuous one. So for instance, if a group of people, after the Prophet passes away, secretly elects someone to be the leader, and then they go and they present this person to the Islamic ummah, and if we try to say, no, this person's more virtuous and it will cause conflict in the ummah, then that first person is okay, it's legitimate. We don't have to put the more virtuous person in. So you can see it kind of fits into the system that they created. The second group is a group of Mu'tazilites, and not all of them, a group of them. And they say that being the most virtuous, like this quality for the imam, is better, but not necessary. So yes, it's better for the most virtuous person to be the imam, to be the Islamic leader, but it's not wajib. It's not an obligatory necessity, right? So it's possible that someone who's less virtuous takes the position, and there would be nothing wrong with that. So that's the second group. Third group takes that a step further. And this is the Asharites and also a group of Mu'tazilites. And they say that no, being the most virtuous is not only it's not a condition, it's not even better. It is irrelevant completely. Anyone could be the Islamic leader. Anyone who has a basic amount of qualities, this person could be the Islamic leader, and they don't have to be the most virtuous. They don't have to be the best. Could be anyone. Okay, so these are the three Sunni opinions. And then, of course, the Shia, we say being the most virtuous is not only necessary, it's one of the most important qualities of the Imam. That he has to. Now, let's look and try to say, why do we say that? We'll disregard the verses of Quran and Ahadith. We'll only look at it rationally for now. Okay, and then next week, inshallah, we're going to use traditions and verses. Today, we'll just think about it rationally. Now, when we think about it rationally, the intellect, when you think about it, states that if there's someone in all aspects that's more virtuous and better than someone else, then that person should be the leader. That's clear. I mean, I don't see how that could be confusing. Imagine there's two people who are proposed to be the Islamic leader of the Ummah. One of them, on all aspects, he's more knowledgeable about Ahkam, he's a better leader, he's more pious, he's closer to Allah. On every single aspect, person A is better than person B. So the intellect would say definitely person A is better for the position of leadership. There's no doubt about it intellectually that the intellect would rule that the better person should be the leader. Now, when you look at that and you try to relate it to the appointment of the Imam, you have two ways the Imam theoretically could be appointed. Either Allah appoints the Imam or people appoint the Imam. Now, we know, of course, Allah appoints him. So when Allah appoints the Imam, you look at it. Can Allah choose someone who's less virtuous to be the Imam? Would he do that? Would he do something which is intellectually and rationally kabih or bad in order to choose someone who's lesser to be the Imam? That wouldn't make sense. And on the other side, if it's people who elect the Imam, again, Allah doesn't give them the permission to choose someone who's worse. They would have to have permission. So for instance, there's a verse, Inna Allah ya'muru bil fahsha. Allah doesn't order, corruption or doesn't order negativity. Right? So this would be intellectually fahsha. This would be intellectually wrong. So Allah doesn't order that. So how can you do it? Right? So either way that you look at the appointment of the Imam, neither one of those would make sense. So the Shia presented this argument. And also there's also ayahs and traditions. As I said, we'll get to those later. So when the Shia put this argument forth, some Sunnis argued against it. And they said, wait a second. No, that's not right. So first, Al-Jaafari, Mu'tazili, he said the discussion in and of itself, it's not a rational discussion. Said Imamate, Islamic leadership, is a religious position, and we shouldn't look at it rationally. We shouldn't use our intellects. We should only use revelation. And so your whole argument, doesn't matter if it makes sense or not, you're looking at it the wrong way. Now some Shia theologians came and they said, look, for Imamate to reach its purpose, the Imam has to have certain qualities. Al-Jaafari said there's only two qualities necessary: knowledge and leadership skills. So if you have enough knowledge and you have leadership skills, or adequate amount of knowledge and leadership skills, you should be able to fill this position. And the Shia theologians said, wait a second here. The position of Islamic leadership is a very important position. It's not a position that's taken lightheartedly. It's a position that is necessary for the protection of the religion of Allah. If the Imams didn't exist after the Prophet, Islam would have been destroyed. The Imams are necessary to protect the religion and to guide humanity towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's a very serious and important position. Now, in order for this position to actualize, to be effective, the Imam needs certain qualities. If the Imam didn't have physical perfections, for instance, if he was extremely ugly, that you couldn't look at him. Imagine like someone just incredibly ugly, right? No one would follow this person. People would turn away. If he was someone who was rude, had bad manners, who was disheveled, was dirty, smelled bad, right? He has a lot of knowledge. He has leadership skills. He knows what to say to people, right? But he doesn't take care of himself at all. No one would follow him, right? No one would follow such a person. There's definitely qualities over and above just knowledge that you have to have. And the biggest one is sin. If the Imam doesn't have taqwa, imagine the Imam sins. And you're supposed to follow this person as your Islamic leader. No one would follow him if he's sinning left and right in the open. Right? So definitely, rationally, you could prove that the Imam has to have certain qualities over and above just an adequate amount of knowledge and leadership skills to fill this position. That's clear. Right? So after the Sunnis heard that, they changed and they took a different approach. Sa'd-ud-Din Taftazani, he said, you're right. Intellectually, the most virtuous should be the Imam. That's clear. And intellectually, it's negative if a less virtuous person becomes the Imam. Agreed. But something being rationally negative doesn't mean it's religiously negative. So this was his opinion. His opinion is the intellect, even if the intellect understands something is negative, that doesn't mean in religion it's considered negative. Okay, because religion, wahi, revelation, precedes our human intellect. Now, the answer that Shia theologians gave to this was that, wait a second, true, human intellect can make mistakes. But there's certain principles that if you find everywhere, if you find that all people accept this rational argument, whether they're religious or irreligious, whether they're Muslim or not, then you could assume that it's part of our innate qualities, that it's fitri. So for instance, a belief in God. A belief in the existence of God is something that you see across all nations. Of course, this God is different in their beliefs of His qualities. There's some people believe in polytheistic religions. Some people monotheistic religions. Some people believe Allah has certain powers, and others believe He doesn't have those powers. There's differences of opinion, but about the existence of God and religion, everyone accepts. So we say that that's fitri. Now, with this principle saying that the best person should be the leader, everyone agrees with that. You don't have to be Muslim to agree. You don't have to be Shia to agree with that. Think about it rationally. Should the best person alive be the leader of humanity? Of course. Everyone would accept that. So when everyone accepts that, we consider that fitri. We consider that part of our innate disposition. And then that's God-given, and we accept that as a source of Islam. So that's how the Shia theologians approach that one. And then finally, the last thing that we'll mention of the Sunnis is that one of them, by the name of Qazi Ud-Din, and he was followed by Taftazani and so many others, the Maturidi scholars and many other scholars use this argument. And they said that, all right, the problem with what you're saying is that what if someone is more knowledgeable and more pious than everyone else, but doesn't have leadership skills? He knows the religion, he follows the religion, but he's unable to lead. And then look at the opposite. What if there's someone who's a very strong and effective leader, but he's not the most knowledgeable about Islam, and he isn't the most, spiritual person? So you could see on both sides that, you know, there could be someone who's more virtuous in one side and less virtuous in another. And then how would you choose in that scenario? Right? So he poses this problem. Now, by saying that also, he's kind of leaning towards saying that the leadership and management aspect is more important than the spiritual and religious aspect. Because even if someone knows the laws of Islam and worships Allah night and day, with good quality worship, but is unable to lead people, then he'd be ineffective in a position of divine leadership. So this ability to lead is more important. Now the problem with that is twofold. Number one, both Sunnis and Shias define the Imam, thank you, as being, it's a little humid today, huh? As being both religious and political leadership, right? So it's not only that the Imam is a political leader, but he's also a religious leader, meaning he has to guide people towards Allah. He has to guide people on a religious level as well. So that's one problem with that opinion. Second problem with that opinion is that there's certain qualities for the Imam that both Sunnis and Shias agree upon. Both Sunni Shia theologians state that the Imam should be, They should be the most knowledgeable of ahkam. They should have the ability to lead. They should be just, and they should be brave. So these four qualities are accepted by both Sunni and Shia. Now, if you're saying that only political leadership is important, you're negating things that are accepted by all Muslims. That's also problematic. So Sayyid Murtada, which we mentioned earlier, he came and he tried to argue against this. And he said, look, you're saying that only an adequate amount of knowledge and and leadership skills are necessary and nothing else is necessary. But look at the position of Imamate, which we just mentioned. If you have an Imam who has an amazing amount of knowledge and leadership skills, but is not brave, no one would say he's a virtuous leader. If he's indecisive, he's not able to make a decision to defend the borders of Islam, no one would say that he's a good leader. If you have someone who's knowledgeable and has good leadership skills, but has bad manners, no one's gonna appreciate him as a leader, right? If he's harsh, if he treats everyone negatively and badly, no one's gonna like him. No one's gonna follow him. So rationally, this doesn't make sense. And second, what you're saying is completely outside of the topic of discussion. What we're saying is that the Imam has to be someone who's more virtuous in all of these qualities, not some of them. Right? The Shia position is that the Imam has to be more virtuous in every single one of these qualities that we mentioned. He has to be more knowledgeable about religion. He has to be more pious. He has to have all of these spiritual and physical characteristics. And he has to be the closest to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if he has 5 of them without the last one, it doesn't count. He has to have all of these qualities to the highest level in comparison to everyone else who's alive. So this relativeness is outside of the conversation, because we believe that the Imams exist who are more virtuous, who have all of these qualities. So then when they heard that, they took another approach. And they said, okay, but the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Prophet came, and sometimes he chose people that weren't the most virtuous. We have to follow the Prophet. He's the one that we take as a role model. And sometimes he went and he chose the less virtuous person to be in charge, not the most virtuous. So we ask, when? What are you talking about? When did that happen? They say one example is when the Prophet chose Osama to be the leader of the army. Right? Osama wasn't, he was young. He wasn't experienced in military warfare. And you're putting him to be the head of the Muslim army. Now the answer that Shias give is, first of all, you don't know. He might have been the most virtuous out of the people who went. Imam Ali alayhi salam wasn't there. So when Imam Ali wasn't there, the Prophet knows who's the most virtuous. Allahu alam on that. And even if he wasn't the most virtuous, the Prophet is not choosing him to be the Islamic leader, to be an imam. The Prophet is choosing him to be the head of the Islamic army. And there's rational reasons to choose different people in different times. Maybe different military strategies. Maybe one person is stronger in one strategy and Osama is stronger in a different strategy which was needed. Maybe to give experience, where Osama's young, the heads of the Islamic army are older, right? We need to think for the future. Let's give a younger person experience so in the future he could be more effective, right? So we're not talking about the position of Imamate. We're talking about a different position. So again, that's completely irrelevant. Now, the last thing I want to do is mention one verse from the Quran, and then this verse, inshallah, will lead us to next week's topic. So, in the Quran, it says, أَفَمَنْ يَهْدِي إِلَى الْحَقِّ أَحَقُّ أَنْ يُتَعْبَى أَمَنْ لَا يَهْدِي إِلَّا أَنْ يُهْدَى فَمَا لَكُمْ كَيْفَ تَحْكُمُونَ. In English that says, is he who guides to the truth worthier to be followed, or he who is not guided unless he is shown the way? So what that means basically is Allah is giving two examples of possible leaders. One is someone who has to be shown the way. Someone who has to be guided. The Prophet has to come, an Imam has to come and teach him and guide him, and then that person can guide others. Is this person who you should follow, or someone who doesn't need to be taught in that way? Someone who from birth is ma'asum and is religious, and Allah has given religious knowledge to. Which one should you follow? Now, Shia theologians look at that and they state that this is a proof for not only prophethood but imamate as well. Whereas Sunnis say that this verse only refers to prophethood. So yes, you should follow a prophet over someone who the Prophet has guided. That's clear. The problem with their explanation is a few things. Number one, after our Prophet, right, he's the final prophet. After him, there's no more prophets. So now what is humanity to do from that day, I don't know, 1200, 1300, 1400 years ago, however many years ago, from that day all the way till now, until the day of judgment? Are we supposed to follow the person who is less qualified? Or shouldn't we have someone who is qualified, who Allah is commanding us to follow? So that's one. Number two, we have to look at all of those proofs for the necessity of imamate, which we're not going to get into today. Right? So you could look at those in the books of Aqad or the books of Islamic theology. And there's many proofs that state that the position of imamate is necessary for the protection of Islam, the protection of Allah's religion, and for guiding people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Without the imam, the religion would be destroyed. Not only the religion would be destroyed, but the universe would be destroyed. We have traditions which we'll get into next week that state that if there was no hujjah on earth, if there was no person that doesn't have to be guided in order to guide us, that first group, if none of them existed on earth right now, the earth would swallow up its inhabitants as the waves swallow up the inhabitants of the ocean. That the earth would be destroyed without the existence of a hujjah. And that's inshallah what we want to talk about next week. So we're going to look at those traditions next week, and we're going to see what those mean. We're going to look at them inshallah on a deeper level, and we're going to try to examine them. Because a lot of times we hear them, okay, if there's no hujjah, the earth would be destroyed. But what does that mean? What does it mean that the universe needs an infallible leader to exist? That its existence is dependent upon an imam. And we're going to look at that, inshallah, and examine it. So I want to thank you for coming. I know it's raining and it was difficult to come here. And you guys don't know me, or at least some of you don't know me. So inshallah, again, I want to thank Jafriya for giving me this opportunity. And I hope, inshallah, I pray that in the future we get more opportunities to be together and to talk about Islamic subjects. And I pray, inshallah, we all increase our knowledge of the Imam, and through that we're able to worship Allah better. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.